girl them broke out. You think you are so fine. Big chat no work, yeah, man, watch the time. Stop playing with my mind. Oh, man, no in a joke when she will want the wine. You call me on the phone. I know what I'm talking, angel, come down. And now I want you home. I tell Jackie, girl, me not use no stone. Action. At a bag of mouth, sweet. Don't be make the girl them broke out. Action. At a bag of mouth, sweet. Don't be make the girl them broke out. I need some action, tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction? I need some action, tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction? Bedroom bully, she no want that you know. She want a man to caress her upright so. And I make love to woman like a war them a go. Woman a ball in a agony and all about. So hardcore loving man you must be insane. Woman no want no man to make shit in pain. Sweet loving in the fall in the rain. Sweet loving a mix of hard brain. Action. At a bag of mouth. Sweet. Don't be make the girl them broke out. Action. At a bag of mouth. Sweet. Don't be make the girl them broke out. You think you understand? I got me being and looking at no one. I need a loving man. But if I love it, don't be and no
getting set for what to go on. Different tune this week.
Can you
go back into the archives, you know, Terry Fabulous and Nadine. Yeah, I'm sure
I need some action, tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a change?
Hey, what's up, Lil? Greetings,
I need
greetings.
some action, tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction? Bedroom bully, she no want that you know. She want a man to caress her up right so.
Fabulous, eh?
Woman like a war them a go. Woman a ball in a agony and all out. So hardcore loving man you must be insane. Woman no want no man to make shit feel pain. Sweet loving in the fall in the rain. Sweet loving a mix of our brain. Action. That a bag of mouth. Sweet.
And as you jump on, share this one. Get a few more eyes on this program. Alright?
I need some action.
Alright, yeah, there you go.
Satisfaction.
What's up, Andrea?
My
Greetings.
chemistry is going. Can you cause a chain reaction? I need some action. Tender satisfaction. My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a chain reaction? I got me being unloving and no one. Well, if I love it, don't be enough affection. You know, I don't love man to tear off our Brazil. Terror coming over.
Alright. Different tune this week, different tune. Greetings. Welcome to Wataguan. My name is Donovan Simon. I'm the president for the Jamaican Canadian Association, Alberta, based here in Calgary. And Wataguan is our way of connecting to the community, talking about issues that affect our association, our city, our country, Jamaica, the world. And, you know, April, we have been talking about taboo topics. Today, we're going to have another one. We're going to talk about sex and diseases, right? Holy things. So hold it here. Make sure you share this one because we want to make sure a lot of people jump on. You know, before we get into the discussion, there are some features of Wataguan that we always have to do, right? One of them is the Patois word of the day. Today, I want to do it a little differently, though. I want to do it a little differently because this one, I want some participation, right? Big up DP. The patois word I am going to use today is teapot. and for anybody who grew up in Jamaica, right? Teapot have all kind of different meaning. So here's what I want you to do. And later on, I'm going to explain what the teapot thing is. You need to help us by putting a patois word that Jamaicans use to describe the genitals. Patois word that Jamaicans use to describe the genitals. Because a whole heap of people grow up in circumstances where they never hear the correct term for them genitals. In fact, if you grew up in Jamaica, it's very likely that as a young boy, you keep hearing about teapot, 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 and you never hear the right word. So help me out today, right? Help me out today by adding your patois word for a genital, whether it's a male genital or a female genital, it don't matter. I want to do half of it squeamish, you know, right? Because we're going to seriously talk about the topic today. But before we do that, right, we're going to get into what's happening in the community, right? So let's get to that. Coming up tomorrow, April 17th, at 7 o'clock, we're going to have another family games night virtually. It's going to be on Zoom because, of course, the COVID restrictions are still in place. So please, if you are on our mailing list, you would have gotten the Zoom link. If not, just send an email to info@jcalberta.com and you'll get the link. There are lots of games, bingo, uh, scavenger hunt, all kinds of things that we're going to do virtually and have some fun on Family Games Night. On April 24th, there is going to be another monthly general meeting. It's going to start at 7 o'clock. We are going to do it again on Zoom because the restrictions continue. So we're going to jump on Zoom. We're going to have our monthly meeting. If you are on our newsletter, you should have gotten the Zoom link. If not, check our website and you'll get that information. I want to make a special appeal to all of us, right? And I see everybody jumping and putting in their words. For those who are just jumping on, right? My patois word of the day is teapot. And what I'm asking all of the participants to do is to share a Jamaican patois word for either the male or the female genitals. All right, I see some words coming on, so yeah. All right, we have to support the folks from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For those who have been following the news, the Soufriere volcano has been active for the last number of days. And of course, that means devastation in certain places. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Association of Calgary is doing a drive tomorrow, right? So they have a food thing, right? Bakes and chicken and rice and stew chicken and salad and sweet, all kinds of stuff. It's starting at 11 o'clock. It's at the Grenada Hall. The Grenada Hall is at 3208 8th Avenue Northeast, right? If you know Marlborough, if you know where Canadian Tire is, it's just on the other side of 33rd Avenue, right? Come around and support, even if you don't want to eat the food. Drop off some goods, buy, make a donation. All of this is in support of the folks back on the island. Lots of people here in Calgary have relatives back there. And as a Caribbean community, as a Black community, as everybody, as a people community, we want to support the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Association in their drive. We're also asking for some support. We continue to talk about the Helping Hands program, where you get a chance to support the JCA's building drive and become a part of our donor wall. I know we've been, because of COVID, not able to open up and have a big splash just yet, but we're still working on the donor wall. So there are a number of categories that you can support. You get your logo on the wall, you get on our website, and we'll soon start our social media features. And of course, we're going to be mentioning, these donors on Wataguan. The other thing about our building, and we keep making this appeal, this week we got a couple of donations of books. We have a library in the space. We want to build the single largest collection of books by Jamaican authors and Afro-Caribbean authors in Canada. Yes, it's an ambitious goal, but that's what we want to do. So we're asking you, if you've got books, please donate them. You can touch base with us in a number of different ways, right? We want to get this library up and running so that when this COVID thing pass, right, we can open up, you can come in, you can do your research, you can engage in education and knowledge, because that's a part of what we want this space for. Here's how you get in touch with us. You can jump on our website, you can send us an email, you can give us a call, you can touch base with us on social media, right? There are a number of different ways to get in touch with us, right? All right, that's all of the stuff for now. It's a fat. I have never heard of a fat. But I tell you, it's an interesting thing. Today we're talking about sex and diseases, and part of what we've been doing in April is touching these taboo topics, the things that we don't talk about. And at the start of the program, I said my word is teapot, and why? Because there are many children who grew up in Jamaica where there was never an open conversation about sex, about physiology, about biology, about all these realities. And it forced these people to find out in different ways. In some cases, they have to make a whole heap of mistakes before they got to the reality of what this is all about. This natural activity that hundreds of millions of people, everybody do it. Some do it right, some do it wrong, some not do it good, some do it all the time. And we're going to talk about that today. We have some guests. But before I bring them on, right, as I was preparing for the show, there are some things that I realized that, you know, maybe there are some facts. There's always a whole heap of research going on about sex and disease, a lot of kind of things. People get PhD for these things, right? So I go out and do a little research, and I see some of these things come up as facts. All right. I don't know if it's all true, right? But it's part of the conversation that we're going to have, right? Because we hide behind some of these things and can have candid, real conversations to help us. So, for example, who knew that apples and pumpkins were aphrodisiacs? I didn't know that, right? I don't know if you did, right? Number 9 is an interesting, and it said fat men last longer in bed. I don't know if that is true because everybody are going to the gym and I try to keep fit and all the rest of it. So maybe that is gym thing that make no sense. Right? If if being pleasing in bed is an important thing, who knows? But it's not just the sex alone we want to talk about. We want to talk about some of the things that happen because of sex, right? Today we're going to talk about HIV and AIDS, right? And some of the things that we possibly don't know, right? People are still dying from AIDS. It is still happening. Over 75,000 Canadians are infected with this disease. There are, in some cases, increasing rates at different parts. So geography does make a difference, right? Some of the stats I look at, so there's been an increase of the percentage per 100,000 in places like Saskatchewan. And in recent times, there's also noted increase in Alberta. All right, I don't have all the facts. So let me bring some of the guests that I have in the wings on, so we can have a real discussion about this. We've got Sipwe and Twyla to join in this discussion. Sipwe, Twyla, welcome to Wataguan.
Thank you.
All right. So before we get deep into the discussion, how many of those 10 facts? Twyla, you're the expert. How many of those 10 facts you didn't know?
I mean, there's a few.
You didn't know about the apple and the pumpkin.
There's a few. I don't know about the fat man one. That one I'm not you know what? I can't and I won't speak to that.
Sipwe, I put out a couple of the facts here about HIV. Geography matters.
Yes.
Who would have known that Saskatchewan would be noted for an increase in the rate of infections, right?
Yes.
And I think one of the things that maybe we'll jump in a little later is the percentage of Black people that are infected still with HIV and AIDS here in Canada, right? Anyway, we're going to jump into discussion. Maybe where we'll start. Let's start off with this whole concept of discussing the topic of sex. And well, I'm going to start with you. Uh, how would you describe how our community deals with this topic?
Great. Thanks, Donovan. I think that it's still very taboo. It's interesting. I love that the JCAA is, putting on taboo topics for the month of April. I think that is so important. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of uneducated people, and just a lack of education as a whole, right? Especially for what you said, that people don't want to talk about it. we were never taught. I remember growing up when I asked about sex, and I went to my mom because I was not about to have that conversation with my father, right? And I went to my mom and she was like, "I'll let the school tell you," right? And I was like, "What?" But that was the generation, right? That's how it was growing up. So I think that there is still a lot of shame and fear and misconceptions around it. A lot of people don't want to have the conversations. And a lot of people are being shunned when they are having those conversations. And so, you know, it's a learning opportunity for all of us to open up because everybody is doing it.
Almost, and everybody do it, but who not do it, one do it.
Right? Boredom is real out there.
Simply, by extension, the lack of conversation about sex leads to a lack of conversation about sexual diseases.
Yes.
Why is our community afraid to talk about it?
Because there is a lot of mystery surrounding sex. As Twyla said, we don't talk about it, but you know, I work with African, Caribbean, and Black communities, and basically the same. They don't talk about sex; they just do it, right? And a lot of times, nobody teaches anyone, particularly the women. Let me put it this way: there is a certain conception that all boys can always learn, and they talk about it with other boys, and so it's okay. They can, try it, taste it, and see if it works, and get a lot of advice from other brothers, uncles, or bigger brothers. Yeah, but with women, and also, is more girls you have, the better you get it at it. That is when it comes to men. But when it comes to girls, it's not even a mystery. Particularly in African communities, I can speak because I'm African myself. I mean, you don't dare talk to your mom about that, right? You don't. And when you go to school, there was never any sex education. Most of my generation, when I was growing up, we never had any sex education there. And if you went to mission schools or boarding schools that on any of that, the boarding mistress will never talk to you about it in any way or any form. The only thing you knew is stay away from boys because it's dangerous. And you can only do that for a while because your body tells you to do something. It wants to experiment and the curiosity. And so that's where the danger was. When it came to girls, it was always stay away. And the longer you stay away from knowing anything about sex until you get married, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't. But now, younger people, here in the diaspora, they learn about these things in school. They learn about sexual education. They learn about HIV, all this, STIs. They learn about those in schools. And also, if they don't know, if nobody really sits them down to talk to them about the importance of taking care of yourself and protecting yourself from these STIs, they will find it on internet.
Yeah. So Twyla, Sipwe brought up the point about the what I'm going to call the gender inequity in how our culture approaches sex, right? And you spend a lot of time trying to empower the woman. So let's go down in that a little bit, right? Yes. In terms of how do we get across to our community, both the men and the women, that there are some mutual benefits and pleasures and all of those things around this whole activity of sex, and also some responsibility. So let's talk about the woman and what's missing in that equation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things, and I love what Sipiwe brought up about protecting yourself, right? Because a lot of times when people are protecting themselves, they're not typically, like the first thing that people are thinking about, it's not to protect themselves from diseases. It's to protect themselves from pregnancy, right? And so there's like a huge, oh God, I can't think of the word right now, but there's like a huge disproportion there, right? Where that's happening because people are like, oh, well, let me grab a condom, not to prevent and to be safe during sex, but so I don't get pregnant or so I don't get this girl pregnant, right? And so I love that you brought that up because I think that is huge and that's important. But yes, so essentially, I think that, it's interesting because I have my show, and there has been a lot of men who have been interacting after watching and things like that. And so a lot of the commentary that I've been getting is that they're rushing, right? Or now that they're being open and trying to talk to their partners are expressing that they're rushing, right? And
Okay,
so
hold on. What do you mean by rush?
them I rush the thing, Donovan. It's interesting. I always used to describe it like this, right? So this is typically what men do. And I really hope that this is appropriate for the show. But essentially it's like this. It's this sweeping hand, right? So it sweeps across the breast, come down to the pleasure center,
It's called
right?
vagina.
Might do a little sweep around there and then they're ready to put it in, right? So it's this, I call it the sweep. But anyways, essentially that's how a lot of men are looking at and operating when it comes to sex. And they're not understanding a man can get ready like this, right? It doesn't take a lot to build up a man's anticipation and to build up his ecstasy. Whereas for a woman, we have spots, we have erogenous zones, right? Just like a man, but it takes a little bit longer for us to warm up. And so there is that disproportionate place of which we call the pleasure gap, right? Where a lot of women are not being pleasured when it comes to their sex life. And so they're faking it and they're doing all other types of nonsense.
Yeah, but isn't there also the fact that they're also not talking about it? And Sipiwe, I want to reel it back a little bit to say, in the same way that a certain education is provided to the girls or to the female, which is stay away from men, stay away from penises, they're harmful until you get married. What are the lessons being taught to these men or to these male, which is translating into what we're seeing today?
That a question to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Me not being a man, I really don't know. I think somehow something is lost somewhere. Because like Twyla said, it's all about when bank I did it. And how many did I bank? That's fine. But really, to me, if I'm going to talk, because I do a lot of mentorship, I can answer to a lot of young girls. The whole thing of sex is more than just the physical. And a lot of times people, if you don't feel right inside, it's not just going to happen. And more so, like Toilet said, it's very easy for a man. Yeah, a little bit of rubbing and that does it. But for women, you have to build it up. It's a muscle which you have to build in your head, because
Yes.
if you don't take time to do that, and if nobody tells you how to enjoy sex, it's not always about giving. No, it's also yourself. You've got to take care of yourself in the process. And it just doesn't happen like that. You've got to build up. And until somebody tells you, it's not going to happen. You can have a house full of children and you just never got an orgasm all your life.
Yes. Can I just elaborate on that a little bit? Do you mind?
Mhm.
I love that you brought that up because we as women, or I don't know, like I know for me, sex for me when I was being taught or educated or misguided, right? It was a lot of my body or my sex is for the pleasure of my partner, right? It was never that this is for me, right? So it was always like, how can I pleasure my partner? Or how can I pleasure the other person? And so I think there's also that disconnect because if you don't know how to find your own pleasure or if you don't have an understanding of your body, your spots and things like that, then how are you supposed to explain it? As you said, Donovan, how are you supposed to explain it to your partner when you don't know yourself, right? Because you've been misguided to believe that your body is the other person's.
So let me throw something into the mix then, because
Yes.
isn't that misinformation and that misguided broadly applicable to the culture, and maybe the real reason why we're having this dysfunction? Because the man hasn't been taught about what the equation should look like. The woman hasn't been taught, but everybody want to do it because physiologically or somebody says or something says, hey, you should try this. And it's this constant learning process. So isn't that a reasonable assessment of what's happening out there? It's just that one voice seems to be louder than the other.
But then you see, okay. Sometimes I think also we can speak of younger people why they keep going from one person to the other because they're not finding that fulfillment in a relationship, in a healthy sexual relationship. Because if it is, then there wouldn't be any need to go running around and trying to do the, face to face. You have a mutually satisfactory relationship. But if not, really, it's not going to happen because it's just a matter of doing it. And for the girl child, it's unfortunate because it's exhausting. It's really exhausting. And in and out of bed with different kind of people, and you ain't getting yours. He's getting his. You ain't getting yours. So what's the point?
So let's ask a question then about the impact or the influence on the whole disease culture. I mean, we still have HIV, we still have AIDS, CPA all over the place, and people picking up stuff all along. Is this part of this miseducation?
I think so, because often people find themselves not being able to negotiate sex. And once they are in a whatever relationship they are in, then if the other person wants to up it a little bit and have sex, and he doesn't have a condom, or he doesn't feel like he doesn't want to use a condom, and a woman feels they can negotiate that, no condom, no sex, then they just let it go. It's unfortunate because you pointed out in ACB, African Caribbean and Black communities, Black people will represent only 3.5% of the population in Canada, but about 16% of people who are HIV positive comes from our community. We are a key population because there's a disproportionate representation of HIV in ACB communities. That is tragic, and it keeps going up. The reason why my program goes on and on and on, I've been doing this for the past 10 years and we keep getting funding because it keeps going up. It's not going down at all. That's disturbing. That is disturbing.
Isn't that a function though, and Twilight baby? Isn't that a function of the fact that there's this physiological need and people going to have sex one way or the other?
I think it is, but I think a lot of times too, as Sipaway said, sometimes women are being pressured because the man doesn't want to wear a condom, right? And so it comes to this kind of dilemma of, do I do it? And then a lot of times too, it can be pressuring, right? So a lot of times it's happening without it. Now, the other thing is we can't have this conversation without bringing up the fact that Black people are less likely to go to the doctor, right? We're the ones who our back is hurting or something's hurting or something's not feeling right in our bodies, and we're not going to the doctor to get tested or to get checked out.
Why is that? Why is there this predominance? Because, I keep running back to culture, right? And I'm looking, maybe for both of you to kind of chime in on this whole cultural thing, because it's very likely it's the same thing that has happened for 2 and 3 generations. And here we are in 2021 talking about the same thing.
Can I pop in?
Sure.
Okay, there are several factors that puts us at risk of getting HIV and maybe more STIs. They are what they call social determinants of health, which factors that you don't see. When you look at a person who is HIV positive, I like to give an example of the iceberg effect. This is the top of the ocean, and you see an iceberg. What you see is the iceberg here, but you have no idea what happened down here to cause this. And this could be some of the factors there are power dynamics in a relationship. Poverty, for instance, one would say, how does poverty increase chances of getting or the risk of getting HIV. It does. And also lack of resources. In Black communities, sometimes we don't know how to access the resources that are available, as Twyla said, to know more information. We don't, and so we just don't go. And we don't go for any test of any sort. We don't go for PET tests. People get more cancer. People don't go for annual tests. We just don't. And that increases the risk of getting all these STIs and HIV, for instance. We don't go for testing. They'll say, oh, why should I go for testing? I don't feel sick. But again, it's different because HIV could live in the body for anything up to 10 years without any sign at all. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, you are having sex with different people, so you keep passing it on. You keep passing it on to your sexual partners. And that's, you see, this kind of information, we also are we don't want to learn information. I mean, it's taken me a long time. I'm actually quite impressed that, Donovan, you asked me to come back. Some other African communities, when I offer to go and give education on HIV, so they understand, no, we don't, like we're saying, like Twyla was saying, we don't talk about HIV, or maybe the youth, but I know we're adults and, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Even though, those are the guys having sex 3 times a day.
Yeah. But when you know better, you do better. And when you don't know, you don't know. And it keeps the proportion of people with HIV in ACB communities. It's shocking because it's not going down. It is shocking. Mm-hmm. We should know better by now.
We should know better. I agree.
Part of this misinformation, and that is one of the themes that I'm hearing coming out of this, right? But some of it is also what I'm going to call the lack of responsibility, right? And Twyla, you do coaching and you help women in particular accept and embrace their sexuality and who they are. Mm-hmm. But are we passing on? Are we seeing more of this sense of responsibility and people passing that on so that there's an ownership to what the experience delivers and who you are? What's that real thing doing?
I mean, yes, I would say yes and no, kind of. Right? Because our education, in my opinion, is our own, right? We are the ones who have to want to be more knowledgeable. We're the ones that have to be searching for that, right? So you have to want to know better, to do better, to be better, right? It's not just, you can't just sit back and it's just going to come to you. I mean, it can, but the likelihood of it happening is not, when you're going and looking for it yourself, the percentage is higher for you to get better understanding. Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right. So here's another question I want. How do we get more of these discussions happening in the families?
I think we have to go back to where we started. I'm telling, we just have to go back to where we started, where aunties and big sisters, we have to intentionally talk about it. Intentionally talk about it and say, you know what, hey girls, come on over to my place. We're gonna have some drink or whatever, and talk about it seriously, not just like passing. And talk about it. We need to talk about, do you understand HIV? Do you understand sexually transmitted infections, how they are passed, the difference between gonorrhea and syphilis, and the percentages? We have to talk about it intentionally, because a lot of times people don't want to talk about it. They kind of lose through it and hoping that these kids will learn something. We need to talk about it. And also, there's a high percentage in women with HIV than men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're going to switch from Taboo parties to some sex talk parties. Twyla, because I see a comment. I see Natalie make a comment about even women learning to enjoy or being taught to enjoy the whole experience of sex. 7 kids later and they don't understand what the pleasure of it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you get that conversation going so that the next generation don't have to go through, this valley of darkness in order to come through with better outcomes?
Well, I'll go back to my comment about it takes you getting to know your body, right? You first have to know your body before you can expect your partner to. Because even if your partner has been through 10, 20, 30, 40 women, no woman is the same. All of us operate differently. And the thing about women is we know how to multitask very well. Okay? So we can be doing the deed, getting it in, doing all of the things, and we're checking off the grocery list that we have to do in our heads. Or we're checking
But,
off, okay, those dishes
but
need to
hold
be
on.
washed.
Is it
That needs to be
is
done.
that a sign of the partner or the person?
So
Because
it really takes understanding yourself, understanding how your body works, but also your partner being able to tune into you, right? And say, is she even enjoying this right now? Is she even feeling? And obviously she's feeling, but I mean like feeling fully what I'm doing here.
yeah, and let's make sure we broaden the conversation because sex is not just a heterosexual activity, folks. Right? As
Exactly.
last week we talked about sexual diversity. So sex is happening between all kinds of people, all kinds of things, as people bring different tools and toys into the play, right? In order to add different dimensions, right? But I still want to go back to the element of learning, where how do we ensure that as a community, some of these key things come up so that 5 years from now, this conversation hopefully is a little bit further on. And especially even with this whole question of disease, where do we see this 5 years from now?
It's all about education.
Yeah.
We follow me on Drumbeat, the African Communities Program. We have on a Facebook every month. I bring up a topic on STI since last year in November. Every month I talk about syphilis. That next month I talked about gonorrhea. We talked about HPV. We talked about safer sex tools that you need to know, and we'll be talking about herpes. All those things, they are important. Even if I don't come there to give the education, you can read. You need to, because
Some of them can't read. Some of them can't read in a simple.
pardon me.
Some of them don't read very well.
Well, I know that, but I mean, you know how they say, if you want to hide anything from Black people, put it in a book because they don't read. No. But this is important. Or I can come there, and that's my job.
Yes.
To go out to communities to give education, because a lot of times people think if somebody has a disease, you can see it. There are so many diseases that are transmitted, and whoever has it has no idea that they have it, even including HIV. As I said, you can have the virus, it can stay in the body for anything to 10 years. And 1 in 7 people in Canada are living with HIV and they have no idea,
Yeah.
because they don't go for testing. And you don't go for testing when you are sick. It's already too late, right?
Yes.
It's important to go, to make it an annual thing. When you go for your annual exam, ask for HIV. Don't assume they will do an HIV test, because that's one thing. You can do all the other tests. If you tell your doctor you want to go for an annual, they just take everything. But if you want HIV, you have to specifically say, I want an HIV test.
Yeah.
But Sipue, part of that is also the shame and stigma that we talk about, because
Definitely.
chances are if you go to the doctor and say, I want to take a HIV test, clearly you're having sex, and chances are you're having sex with multiple partners.
But
right?
you know,
So avoiding it is part of this whole cultural shaming and all of that, isn't it?
the doctor's not going to go home with you. He doesn't know you know how. You go for a test, he doesn't know you. You just want to test, that's all. And if you're close to your doctor, you just tell them, this is just an annual thing. You go to have a dental exam. Why are we not afraid of that? Why are we not ashamed to have rotten teeth and say, oh, I'm not going to go there because they'll see my teeth which are rotting?
Question, and that is what I keep asking about, this stigma of shame. Where did it come from?
From the mystery.
Especially against the background of the fact that everybody, well, most people out there having sex in some way, shape, or form.
Of course.
That's
Nothing
the
is,
thing I'm
right?
struggling with.
Nothing is going to change. Like, I know, Donovan, you keep asking, like, 5 years from now, right? nothing is going to change until sex becomes a topic and a conversation as opposed to a taboo topic and conversation, right? Until we release the shame around sex and all of these things, the fear, the stigma, all of that, and just have it as a regular conversation like we would about the day and whether the sky is blue, pink, or purple, sex is always going to be that thing that we have to whisper and talk about, or that we can only, talk about with our girlfriends or our guy friends or whatever. And if that's where you're getting your advice from, well, then that's a part of the problem. Just say that.
No,
I don't know how that's.
Some of them know though. You can't just beat up all of the guy friends.
Hey, I said girlfriends too. What?
Go ahead, Sifu.
I don't know how that's going to go away. The mystery,
Yes.
it's the shrouding around mystery about sex. It's not. I don't think it's something that we're just going to say, okay, by year 2023, get that we'll all be comfortable talking about sex. It's just so wired in our psyche that we don't talk about sex. Even if, when I have when we have all these functions out there, and I have my booth there, and I have condoms on the on the desk. People see you, and they're just wondering their personal. The moment they see condoms, they go, "Yeah," always laugh. Always laugh. I don't know why. And then they go away.
As if you don't know what it's for. In fact,
I know.
there are many of us who will say that the first time, even though there are people who are petrified to walk into a store or a pharmacy or 7-Eleven and pick up a pack of condoms, right? Even though in their heads, they're like, I really should practice some responsibility here. But somebody's going to know that I'm going to have sex. Like, really? And when you
They're
pick
not
up
going home with
when
you.
you pick up the banana and the zucchini and the cucumber, why are they thinking the same thing?
But I would urge them that they should always remember that the doctor is not going to go home with you. The doctor doesn't know you.
Unless the doctor will come home with you.
Pharmacist doesn't know you. It doesn't care, really. They just want to be paid, and that's all.
Right.
So why are you embarrassed?
But why are people embarrassed about it? Like, seriously. And you talk to the ladies all the time, and them have all kind of freaky ideas and, great thoughts of what they could do and what they want. Why isn't it communicated more?
Because when you talk about sex, usually with women, for instance, they are afraid of being labeled that about so much about it. It means you do too much of it. But so what?
Or worse.
I know.
What is too much, Sipu? There's no too much. You can only do, it's like food, you can only eat so much.
Well, they like too many people. It means you're so experienced. It means you've slept with so many people. But nobody knows. I mean, the good Lord didn't put a meter here to say, so this one is done so much mileage. It didn't. So what's the problem?
It's a good thing you never put a meter. I tell you. There are some design factors that I think are good things. All right. We're looking at the clock. The community, what's the role that social organizations, I know for Watagua, we've been trying to raise awareness, but where are the other social organizations in this? And I also want to bring out the church. How does it fit into this discussion? And roll your eyes. Yeah, man, serious thing. Because there are many people who go to church and believe that sex is evil, and many of them have all kind of different sex and make it seem as if them don't know. Or nobody don't know because everybody is so dumb to the thing. So who want to take on that one?
I'll let Sipaway take it.
I know, because I work with all kinds of communities, and I've been knocking on all kinds of churches and so that I can go there and give education on HIV. But it's the doors have been shut time and time again. Some have, I think I've been to like 5 or 6. It was really a hallelujah success, that because generally they do not want. Mm-hmm. They do not want to talk about it. Okay. It's a great platform, though. I would like, for any social change, for me, any social change in our communities, Black people, the church plays a major, major role. And I feel a lot of times we are let down because of the stigma associated with sex, for instance. We don't talk about it. And yet it could play a major role to change, galvanize people, to change people's attitude, to develop a new worldview when it comes to sex.
and
It's,
and and to get rid of some of the myths, right?
Mhm.
So whether it's the apple and the snake or all the other things that we have had to endure, a part of what we're living today are many of the myths, right? And changing some of these things. There's a time, for example, Sipiwe, when there was this perspective, wherever it came from, that having sex with a virgin was a cure for certain types of diseases, sexually transmitted diseases, right?
but which I think is crazy as well, because in certain communities, when you tell people who are married that it's important to just make sure what your HIV status looks like. You need to go all the time. And they say, oh, my wife will go, and if she's negative, then I'm negative. What kind of thinking is that?
Mhm.
What kind of thinking is that? Again, it's gender based, and I think there's that disproportionate, which it doesn't quite work out, for us, because if one tests positive, you both should go for a test. And then people always accusing, where did you get it? It's slipping around. That is why it. And for all you know, you probably got it from the partner, the very partner who doesn't want to go for a test.
Yeah. But,
Mhm.
but, but then it creates guilt and all the other things and fear, right?
Exactly.
You know, I remember doing an HIV test many, many years ago as part of an insurance process. And just the thought of it, and I mean, this is a long, long time. There was so much fear because
Mhm.
the thought was, oh my God, what if it comes back positive, right?
Mhm.
Uh, you know, some of these people, like, what do you tell your mom? What do you tell your dad? What do you tell your partner, right?
Mhm.
And that is part of that fear, right? That continues until today, right? Even though people afraid of COVID is not not part of what is happening now too.
But you see, Donovan, with education, really, I like to constantly emphasize that with education, know that HIV really is a chronic disease now. And it's not like I'm dismissing it, like, oh, don't worry about it. But really, if you test positive, you will live a normal life, a long, long life. And, you're less likely to die of, AIDS-related illnesses. You're probably likely to die with other things if you're
Yes.
on your medication. And you just live a fairly normal life, because women who are HIV positive and are on their medication, very few children are born in Canada with HIV from mothers who are HIV positive.
Mhm.
People who are HIV positive are getting married or having children, yeah? And they are undetectable, they reach undetectable level. You can actually have sex without any condom, without transmitting it. See, all this information, I would need like 30 minutes or an hour to talk to you about HIV and where we are right now, and to dispel all the fear that is there with the virus.
Yeah.
Really.
And part of it is this education. So what I'm hearing is that we have to continue this conversation. We have to
Absolutely.
multiply it, right? I see a comment here from Tisha saying it has to start within the family. There has to be the demystification
Mhm.
of sex and the things related to it. Because if you can't comfortably, in fact, if you're still letting a little boy think that his penis is a teapot or a PP or whatever, all
Mhm.
these, odd names that we call our genitals, then how do you have a conversation candidly to say, people with HIV can live healthy, normal lives because there's medication available for it? So
Yes.
that, I think, is a huge part of the process, the demystification that has to happen within the homes, within the communities, right? And stop behaving as if there's this big, huge secret that nobody knows, because all that's happening is that people going out there to hunt and find and find out what them can find out. All
Mhm.
right, Twyla, I forgive you a shot. Uh, for the women who want this liberation, and for those who, what is the parting advice to them in terms of, this whole thing of, hey, you've got to find some for you, sister. Like, what are you saying to them?
Wow, That's a big question there, Donovan. I mean, it depends on if there's underlying factors, right? So, to put it quite frankly, I specialize in sexual trauma. So, what that means is women who have experienced trauma sexually, whether it's rape, molestation, whatever. Which a lot of times, like the stats on that is alarming, right? Like 1 in 4, sometimes 1 in 3, depending on where you're looking, women have gone through that. And so that's a lot of the stuff that I deal with, because how can you be sexually liberated when you're still dealing with traumatic experiences or shame from those experiences? Because no matter what, you're always taking those with you into your further and your present experiences, even if you have a partner who is loving, caring, and all those things. And so my thing is always about getting to know where you are sexually, understanding what's going on, what the layers are that are going on within you, and then working through those things so that you can be sexually expressed and sexually liberated and have those desires living out fully.
All right, Sipiwe, I'm going to give you the last word on this whole issue of sex and diseases, because it's happening, it's a reality, and it's happening in the Black community. What do you say to those watching?
Wear a condom. I always wanted to start by wearing a condom is the safest thing, and that's the best thing you can do for yourself, because you don't know what the other person has. You don't even know what you yourself have. You could pass on, or you could get it from somebody else. So the best thing is to use a condom. Wear a condom as much as you can, unless and until you get to a relationship where you both are mutually agreeable that you are not going to, try things. You just don't know, because like, again, you don't, the good Lord didn't put you on so that this one must be careful because this one has got this. You don't. And yeah, and you can't tell just by looking at somebody if they have something, and they might not even know, because as you said, our communities, we don't go for testing. We don't know what we have. We don't know what we're going to pass on to other people, and we don't know what we're going to get from other people, because we could get those things from other people. So please stay safe and keep it covered. Keep it covered. Yeah.
Don't be afraid
Testing and keep it covered.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's getting tested. Just get tested.
All right. This has been awesome. Twyla, Sipiwe, thank you for being a part of.
Thank you for having me.
Wataguan.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
I'm always available anytime.
All right, we'll possibly do it again.
Okay.
Right, listen, Wataguan, we come to the end of another episode. This has been awesome. We're talking taboo topics in April. And today we talk about sex and diseases, things that are happening in our community. For those who missed it earlier, and we're asking people to put their patois word that describes the genitals. I didn't see a lot. If you jumped on the show, and even if you joined it late, put a patois word that you grew up or you heard describe the genitals, not the correct word, the one that come out of patois, right? For those who also missed the announcement, we're going to have family games night tomorrow evening on Zoom. It starts at 7 o'clock. Check the newsletter. You should get the link there. And next week, the 24th, we're going to have another general meeting. COVID is still around, but today is really nice out. So people, enjoy yourself here in Calgary or wherever you are. And we're going to do this again next week, same time, where we're going to be talking about death and grief, another taboo topic. Yeah, because all we are dead, right? And there needs to be embracing death and grief and learning how to deal with it, right? So join us same time, same place as we do it again. Until next week, like I said, stay safe, be good to yourself, avoid the COVID because it's still out there. All right, take care. See if we can find a tune for leave us out.
Woman want good love, now sympathize. Woman want good love every night. Right up.
All right.
Love a girl, Abby, step up. She want a lover. Action. At a bag of mood. Sweet. Don't be the girl them broke out. Action. At a bag of mood. Sweet. Don't be the girl them broke out. You think you are so fine. Big chat no work, yeah, man, watch the time.
Stop playing with my
Oh, man,
mind.
no in a joke when she will want the wine.
You call me on the phone,
I know what a talking angel come down.
and now I want you home.
I can't Jackie, girl, me not use no stone.
Action,
At a bag of mouth, you.
sweet.
Don't be made the girl them broke out.
Action,
At a bag of mouth, you. Don't be
sweet.
made the girl them broke out.
I need some action, tender satisfaction.
Adults.
My chemistry is flowing. Can you cause a change?